Handcrafted baskets go back to the start of civilization and have traditionally been made by single artisans working in solitary studios. One look at this company's iconic headquarters building and you know they've taken it to a whole new scale. Tami Longaberger, Chair and CEO of the Longaberger Company, is this week's Leader on Leadership.
Knowing when to ask for help is critical when you're in a leadership position.
It's getting the best out of people. That's the essence of leadership.
Major funding for Leaders on Leadership is provided by Greenleaf Trust.
Helping people manage their wealth, accumulate assets, and preserve those assets for generational continuity implies trust. We are sitting down on the same side of the desk as you are. We're planning for your financial needs.
Additional funding provided by the Wayne State University School of Business Administration.
Welcome to Leaders on Leadership, here in front of a live student audience at St. Andrews Hall on the campus of Wayne State University. I'm Larry Fobes. The Longaberger Company, based in small-town central Ohio, has grown from very humble beginnings to become a national brand that collectors adore. Thanks for being here, Tami.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
When I told people that you were going to be on the show, I got two reactions. People who know the products in the company raved, and then the other half of the crowd didn't know the company at all. For the sake of that latter group of our viewers, give us a thumbnail sketch of what the company is, what it does, and how it does it.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here at Wayne State University, and many people know our company as a basket manufacturer, and we hand make baskets in Ohio. Have been doing it actually for 4 generations. I'm 4th generation, been in our family for over 100 years. And so basket making and the trade and the craft is very important to our family and to our collectors, as you have met. We also are a direct selling company that provides an opportunity for primarily women and a few good men to own their own business and market home and lifestyle products in addition to baskets. They sell pottery, wall art, wrought iron, really anything to do with the home and lifestyle.
Now, your father started the business, but even before that, he was an entrepreneur in small-town Dresden.
Yes.
He owned the grocery store, the pharmacy, the diner.
Right.
What do you think is the difference between the philosophy of an entrepreneurial leader in a town of Dresden with 1,500 people and one in Manhattan with 15 million? I mean, is bottom line profit the only driving force?
Well, I'm far more familiar with the entrepreneurial spirit of a small town. Manhattan's not my town, so I'm really not an expert to speak on that. But I can tell you about the entrepreneur of a small town. And it's really, my dad was one of 12 children. So he learned at an early age to take care of himself. He learned about good work ethic, persistence, and respecting your elders, and doing things right. Really the golden rule. That's how he conducted his life, and it's how he conducted his business. I also think he was driven by a passion to do something with his life, to make a difference in his community, and it's all of those spirits that really drove him continue to drive the company today, and I think it's a very important legacy he left all of us.
Now, when he started the business, it was just selling a few baskets in one of his stores that your grandfather made.
Yeah.
And then when it came time to start the business, he needed capital, and he sold the 3 stores to fund the 3 profitable stores.
That's what I was going to say.
The family income to fund a new business. How important is it for entrepreneurs to be that dedicated to the dream that they'll take that kind of a risk, and in his case, put all the eggs in one basket?
Literally. Entrepreneurs, true entrepreneurs, are special people. It takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage to in the face of everyone telling you that you're crazy, to cash in profitable businesses and go start one that really is just a dream. But my father had he believed in himself. He believed in the business he was trying to create. He knew that Americans appreciated good American craftsmanship. It was just a matter of getting more people to see what he had to offer. He knew that the people working for us took pride in their business, in their work, and they still do today. And I think it's the people that you surround yourself with and the community that you surround yourself with gives you that support, gives you that, that courage to live out your dreams.
I think it was in his book that he talked about having this uncompromising expectation for success. You just can't imagine failure. How does that play out in your role leading the company now that it's more mature?
I guess I was very blessed to have a father that believed that way, because you are exactly right. The idea of failure never entered his mind, and he did not plan for it. He even would go so far as to say, well, I'm not going to buy life insurance because you're betting against yourself when you do that. So it was a constant belief in success. And I think that's something that I inherited, and something that has served me certainly very well leading this company through the enormous challenge in the economy and the changes in the world and the market that we live in today.
Now, you'd worked in his businesses and then in the company before university, then after.
Yeah.
And then when he died in 1997, you became the chair CEO.
Yes.
How do you go about, in that situation, in the shadow of your father, establishing your leadership from your own viewpoint, or do you decide just to have a legacy of him and do it the same way?
It's a tough thing, because you vacillate back and forth, because you hear either in your mind the things he taught you and the things that made perfect sense for the business at the time. My father and I were very fortunate that we spent a lot of time together the last 18 months of his life. And we were able to talk about what might happen in the future. And in many ways, I was very blessed. He gave me permission to do the things I needed to do. He also taught me that things change. The world changed. He made so many changes in his life and in business. One of his philosophies, and some of the people here that are familiar with Longaberger know that he lived by a rule, and that rule was subject to change. And that is so true, holds true today, and I think is important for any leader, because you have to have the courage to take people not necessarily where they want to go, but where they need to go.
Now, the years after you took over the lead of the company, 97 to 2001, exploding growth in your company, 25% year over year, almost $1 billion in revenue, exactly. 8,000 employees. Is it tough as the relatively new leader of the company to keep focused on the core things that leaders need to worry about when you're so busy just filling orders and keeping up with growth?
Yeah. I don't think a leader changes their values, but as you bring hundreds, maybe thousands of people into your business, it becomes a challenge to teach them what the business is all about, how we started, what our values are, what our beliefs are, and how you continue changing with the future. And that was a real challenge for us. I'd like to say we did that well, but I'm sure we could have done that better.
Then you got a chance to change again.
Exactly.
In about 2002, 2003, the national economy started going soft. A few years later, we went into the recession that we're still hopefully coming out of. Right. How do you shift gears as the chair and CEO to go from trying to keep up with exploding growth, that euphoria, and now keep up with a national economy that's in free fall?
I think it's difficult, because you have to look at the reality of the situation. Even when everyone around you is saying, oh, it'll change, it'll change, it'll change, just wait a few more months, wait next month. You have to have the courage to look at the reality of the situation and say, it's not going to change. And if I don't change it, no one else will. And that's the difficulty of being the leader of any organization, is if you don't make the change, no one will.
Now, it's got to be more fun leading the chaos when growth is going as opposed to the economy winding down. But are there some leadership commonalities or clear differences between those two different things, or is the job the job?
I can only speak for my experience, but I can tell you as a leader, I've learned so much more in the difficult, challenging times than I did in the high growth business, because I think you get this false sense of you're really smart and you really know what's going on and you're invincible. It's easy to work in an environment that's chaotic with growth. The challenge, you find out what you're made of in tough times. And I actually think I've learned so much more about business in the challenging times than I did in the great 90s.
Yeah. Now, I read an interview you did in Zanesville paper just a couple of weeks ago, and you were talking about some of the things in retrospect that maybe could have gone different in the last year or two from your job. You were talking about things like technology. You were talking about changing some of the business model, about how people made money in the company. Is it more difficult to think about making major changes in the company when you're coming off a good run because everything feels secure?
I think you're right. I think it is more difficult because when things are good, that really is the time you need to start adjusting. When you wait until things need changed, you're almost 6 months behind. And then it's difficult to bring things along. But that takes a lot of courage, and I think that's one of the lessons that I learned. I should have changed things quicker. You know, in hindsight, the next time we go through this cycle, because we will, that's business, that's life, and I suppose now you live long enough, you learn these things, right? I will change things much quicker and be more grounded in the realities of the world versus, you know, this wonderful opportunity we have. Really, it was a Horatio Alger story of my father's business.
Now, you also talked in the article that you may have been guilty of not always listening carefully to the advice that people were giving. Now, I remember from my corporate days that people wouldn't tell the chair CEO the truth. Right. They'd varnish it or tell partial truths. How do you encourage the people in the organization and your other advisors to tell you the whole truth and then assess whether they are or not in the transfer?
It's a tough thing because I have been in situations where you have staff that have been with you a long time and they so much want to believe that we're going to go back to where we used to be that you end up getting incomplete information. And it is very difficult to separate the emotion, particularly in a family-owned business, in a culture within our organization where we consider all of our employees, our independent sales associates, family, that everything gets intertwined between business, personal, professional, because it is one big family.
How do you separate that in the day-to-day business?
It's very difficult. It's just very difficult, and that's one of the things that rests on senior leadership in the business. Some of us do it better than others. I'm sure there have been times I've been wrong. I've been wrong, and you just need to collect yourself and say, missed on that one. I've made a lot more mistakes than I've had successes, but my dad always taught me, you know, that you're going to make mistakes. Yeah. It's how you respond to it, and then just make sure you don't repeat the same mistake again.
So it's what you were talking about before. You keep learning so that next time you don't do the same thing.
Always. You know, there was a man that I met maybe 12 years ago. His name's Les Wexner. He founded The Limited, a very successful man in the Columbus, Ohio area. And he told me at a very young age, I was maybe 34, he said, you know, when you own your own business, you have to be deliberate about learning because no one else will push you to learn. And so you have to take it upon yourself to have the discipline to keep teaching yourself new things.
Even as a CEO?
Absolutely. Maybe more importantly.
Maybe more importantly. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll continue talking with Tami Longaberger about some of her work around the world on social issues. That's coming up on Leaders on Leadership. Welcome back to Leaders on Leadership. Joining us today is Tami Longaberger, Chair and CEO of the Longaberger Company. Tami, we've been talking about your work in the company, but you're also out doing all sorts of things on social issues around the world, a lot for women. The company works with American Cancer Society on breast cancer research, raising money. You've been chair of the Arab Women's Leadership Institute, the UN Commission on Human Rights in Geneva. With all the things that CEOs and chairs have to face back at their desk, why is it important to also invest energy and intellectual capital in these kind of projects?
For me, it's two reasons. One, I do believe that I have to continually develop myself. And the way I do that is to get outside the world of baskets. I've had one job in my life, and that's working for my father, working in the family business. And I don't want to be 80 years old and say, could I have done something else? I don't know. So I won't have to answer that. The second thing is, I believe my father was in the Army. We were raised with a very strong commitment to our country, and valued and appreciated that we live in this wonderful country. Yes, we have our challenges, but it's the greatest country to live in the world, with opportunities like my father had, like our family has had, and that we all have a responsibility to give back to our community, to our country in some way. And so, of course, I didn't join the military, but I'm able to do some things in the Middle East that are helpful, I hope, to other women in the Middle East through the United States government and NGOs in Washington, and then also had the privilege to do some things in the Baltic states, as well as you mentioned, the UN Commission. And it's how I give back.
Good. Now, you do all this work in the company, in the region, and around the country. You're a leader of a national business and the international stuff we just talked about. But you mentioned someplace, I read a quote by you, you said it's tough to live in a small town if you've got the big name. When you're on the national scene for business and the global scene for policy, how do you deal with that in your hometown? How do you deal with being the big name in a small town?
I guess I'm fortunate that in a small community you know everyone. So many of the people that I work with, people I run into at the grocery store, at the gas station, I went to high school with. So sometimes you have to remember who they are and take things with a grain of salt that they say to you. Or on the other hand, you know that they're a good person and they just want to spend some time with you or have something to share. And I guess it's difficult for me to answer because I've always lived there. It's my reality, it's my world, but maybe it's why I travel and do some of the things I do.
Could be. Now, there was a poll that was just released yesterday by the ABC News, and they said that 50% of American citizens believe that the American dream is dead. What can chairs and CEOs, business community leaders do to help turn around this perception that there's no hope for the future?
Well, I know that's not true. We have 30,000 women and a few men that all own their own American businesses across the country. And each one of them are wonderful examples of how you don't have to invest a lot of capital to start your own business. You can work from home. And I do believe that home-based businesses are really what will help change this economy. If we're looking for these huge investments of capital and expecting Wall Street to bail us out or the banks, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I think it's that American ingenuity and the American value system and our great free enterprise system that really is what will rebuild this country, like one person, one neighborhood, one community, one state at a time.
Given what the economy is and the mindset we just talked about with at least half of our fellow citizens, if your father was starting the business today, could he pull it off?
Well, I'm biased. I think my dad could do anything. He would have different challenges. My dad never saw the internet. My dad never saw eBay. he really never saw a mobile phone. So it was a very different world and climate in which he started in. Also, there weren't a lot of expectations about him. Now, of course, when you have some success, there are enormous expectations. But he would probably be up to the challenge. If he wanted to do it, it would be done.
Okay. Do you think the business would thrive? Would it have the same up and down start, or
Absolutely.
would it just, yeah.
Absolutely. It's some of those business students that are here today, that basic business life cycle that you study, it's real. It's life. And when you're on the trajectory, you never think you're going to see the next cycle, but you live long enough, you stay with one company long enough, which doesn't happen that often anymore. You'll see those cycles. And that's part of the challenge as a leader, to recognize that is normal. Those are the ebbs and flows, and you continue guiding the ship through the change.
What can you do as a leader to get ready for the next ebb and flow? You've got your own personal experiences. What other kind of things?
I enjoy reading about other business leaders, and not necessarily just about their business, but how they manage their life. I am afforded the opportunity, if I want to meet a lot of different people, a lot of different businessmen, businesswomen, and being able to talk to them about how they deal with their life. Because when you are a leader of any company, any institution, it's not an 8-to-5 job. It is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And so how you deal with that as a human being really affects your ability to lead.
So leaders aren't just the academic skills, just the textbook things that we universities teach. It's this whole human side of it.
Well, it can be those people, but I'm not sure they're very effective. I think leadership quality is something that is intangible. And I'm not sure it can be taught. You can experience it, you can learn from your experiences, primarily by the mistakes you make, and collect those. And as my father has said, don't make that mistake again. But I'm not, all of those skill sets, I went to business school myself, all of those things we learn in business school are important and applicable. But that's why I was so thrilled to be a part of your series. I mean, Leaders on Leadership. I'm not sure that's taught in every business school and needs to be.
Great. Well, what's the difference, do you think, between your leadership viewpoint and your father's? Your father wasn't university and had some troubles in high school, according to his book. So how did he see the world differently than the way you see it now?
Well, I wish he was here to answer that question. My dad was someone that loved the challenge, and the administrative things just got in his way, quite honestly. So he taught me how to dream big and move forward. That was his strength, that was his niche. Nothing else mattered. Now, what I did then was went to college and got this organized training. And I'll tell you what he thought of that was the first day I came to work after I had my big business degree, and I'm a marketing major, and I'm all thrilled to be there, and I've got my diploma in my hand. He looked at me my first day of work and he said, "Now listen, here's your desk. You sit down there," he said, "and you just sit there and learn for the next 5 years. And if you can combine the college education with experience, then you come talk to me."
I've got one last question for you, Tami. In the book that you just released, Weaving Dreams, great read.
Thank you.
The foreword's written by Bernie Kosar.
Yeah.
And he compared your drive in life to the drive of a championship football team on the field. Yeah. Nice compliment.
Very much coming from him.
Let's put you in a hypothetical situation. You wake up tomorrow morning, you're no longer the chair CEO of Longaberger, you're the president and general manager of a professional football franchise. What lessons from this job are you going to be able to apply in that one?
My lesson would be I would learn to hire the right person, and I would hire Bernie Kosar to run my professional football team.
Do the ideas of working with customers, is that the same as working with fans and football players or do physical work like the physical people who make goods?
I think big businesses that have a following of people who love the organization, there are parallels, and there would be many, many things that would be similar to our collectors and our organization, our extended family, and that of the locker room.
Thanks for being here, Tami.
Thank you very much.
Please join us again next time for another edition of Leaders on Leadership. Goodbye.
Major funding for Leaders on Leadership is provided by Greenleaf Trust.
Helping people manage their wealth, accumulate assets, and preserve those assets for generational continuity implies trust. We are sitting down on the same side of the desk as you are. We're planning for your financial needs.
Additional funding provided by the Wayne State University School of Business Administration.
An encore presentation of Leaders on Leadership is available on demand for viewing at DetroitPublicTV.org.